Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hey witches, welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy. I'm Morgan, and today I have episode 155, Tucson Gem Show behind the scenes. Now, if you are sitting here and you're like, I really don't want to hear about behind the scenes, I just ask you to listen anyway, because I realize that I spend a lot of this podcast educating. That's what a lot of the episodes are, is me teaching. I'll share my wisdom. Sometimes there's just the need for a really fun episode where I tell stories, and there's going to be some wisdom here or there, especially if you're planning on attending the Tucson Gem Show. And I'm going to nerd out. I'm going to give you facts about it and all that kind of good stuff. But that's what this episode is today. It's just a fun episode about the Tucson Gem Show and a behind the scenes perspective as a business who shops at the gem show, not as one who sets up, but as one who shops. Okay. So the Tucson Gem Show is the largest gem show in the world. By the time this episode airs, we will have started shopping. It's very surreal to me to do my podcast so far in advance now. And it's really only about 5 or 6 days in advance. But I'm used to, you have to understand, I've been doing the podcast for 3 years now? 4 years? I don't even know. I don't have a concept of time. But I normally would do them on Tuesday, and then they would come out on Wednesday. So Tuesday, I would write the podcast, record the podcast, edit the podcast, all of that in one day. And yes, I would be working sometimes until 7 or 8 at night, which is why I recently hired an amazing VA. Shout out to Mary Kate. Thank you so much. Who edits my podcast, puts it up for you all that, because I love writing the material for the podcast. I love recording the podcast, the video, the audio, all of it. Everything after that is just bleh. I'm not a fan of doing any of that. So that was just a little side thing. So by the time this episode comes out, we will have started shopping. But the gem show doesn't officially start until the 29th this year, January 29th. So, yeah, we're going to have fun this episode. I'm going to start out nerdy though, because y'all know I love to do that. I love to give you facts. We're going to nerd out for a second, because I think, there is a common misconception or a misunderstanding about what the Tucson Gem Show is. Even if you Google it, there's what is going on here? Because there's just not really clear information until you show up at the Tucson Gem Show. And then you're like, oh, this is what they mean. Okay. So the Tucson Gem Show started in 1955 as one show, okay? And to this day, there is still an official Tucson Gem Show, Gem and Mineral Show, that happens at the Tucson Convention Center. This year, it is February 13th through the 16th, okay? So if you Google Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, chances are that's going to be one of the first things. And it's going to show you that it's only around for 2 days. And it's going to show you that it costs $20 a ticket to get in. And you're going to be like, but Morgan shops for weeks. What is going on? So I'm going to let you know now. I have lived in Tucson since 2012. And I've been attending the gem show since about 2013, 2014. I have never attended the official Tucson Gem and Mineral Show at the convention center. Never. Not once. Because there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's $20 a ticket. And I'm like, I'm good. Maybe $25 a ticket. I don't even know anymore. Number two, what you're going to see at the main show at the convention center are the $10,000 super rare, absolutely gorgeous specimens. That's what the main part of that gem show is. And I'm going to share more as we go into this episode about how expensive my gemstone taste is. So basically that would just be a few hours of just absolute pain for me because I love expensive, pretty, shiny gemstones. I love them. Yeah. So I don't go. We don't go. We've never gone. Plus, just by the time, so that's at the end of the gem show. And by the time we hit that last weekend of what has been 3 weeks of shopping for us, I'm exhausted. I'm dead. In fact, it was a joke between Texas Megan Winkler and I. Just this week we were talking about the Tucson Gem Show and I was like, oh, this weekend I'm going to be dead. I was like, you don't have to write that in your schedule. She's like, no, I'm writing it in my schedule. She literally wrote it down in her date planner. Like, Morgan's dead for just this weekend. I will be revived on Monday. It's fine. Because that is, you'll understand at the end of this episode. Okay. So more nerdy stuff. As many as 52 independent shows make up the Tucson Gem Show. So from this point forward, understand that when I say the Tucson Gem Show, I am talking about the entire show that spans all of Tucson. Okay. I'm not talking about the one little one at the convention center. So there are as many as 52 shows, which bring in nearly 65,000 people over the course of 3 weeks into Tucson. It's insane. And let me tell you, it has been growing and growing and growing. Like each year, especially, I would say since the pandemic, parking has gotten so much harder. We have actually not been able to attend one of our main shows because there was no parking at the facility at all. And that has happened more than once. And it is extremely frustrating. Anyway, there are over 4,000 vendors within the 52 shows. Okay, so that's what I say. When I say Tucson Gem Show, it's huge. You can find little shows all over Tucson. They start as early as technically the 24th. But like I said, we have already started shopping by the time this episode comes out because I get invitations to for some of the vendors to show up early because of how much money we've spent with them, the relationship that I have with them. So we actually started the 20th, January 20th, was our first day going out and shopping. So some shows are wholesale only. Some shows are open to the public. Some have a blend. So they'll have retail prices on the gemstones, but wholesale people with a resale license will get a cheaper discount or a bigger discount, on them. Okay. So this year, the Tucson Gem Show officially starts January 29th and goes until February 16th, ish. Okay. Some of the warehouses are open earlier than that, the 24th. And just a fun little fact here. So a lot of our vendors, have warehouses that now are open year round because what happened is in 2021, the Tucson Gem Show, that was pandemic. So in 2020, when the pandemic actually kicked off, the Tucson Gem Show had already started. Okay. It had already happened, because it happens in January, February, and we all got locked down right after my daughter's birthday in March. So in 2021, they waited until the extreme last minute to say that they were moving the gem show from January to April. And what had happened is a lot of the vendors ship this stuff by sea. They ship it on a boat. And so they had already started the shipment. The shipment was already on its way to a port in California. And it was cheaper for a lot of them to just rent a warehouse here in Tucson rather than ship the stuff back or pay for storage somewhere. So it's just cheaper to rent a really shady, let me tell you, some of these warehouses are in the shady sections of town. But now it's just been like a holding facility for the last few years. Now they're all starting to open up and employ people to either by appointment or I can just email them and be like, hey, we're going to come by Monday. And they're like, all right, cool. And it's not only just the people from overseas. It's the shipping, just cross country from a lot of the vendors are on the East Coast, so like the transport of like transfer trucks and, tractor trailers, things like that. And then trying to put all that stuff up, they were like, well, let's just rent an abandoned warehouse, a cheap warehouse that's for rent. And now they're all set up and we can shop them anytime. So of the 50-ish shows that there are here, we only attend about 9 to 10 of them. So that actually shows you, and yes, that's our entire 3 weeks. So that just shows you how massive the Tucson Gem Show is as a whole overall. But we're doing our shopping for the entire year for gemstones for the most part. Now that we have a lot of vendors here in town with open warehouses, we will at least try to buy gemstones from, to satisfy us from about February until maybe September, October. And then we hit the Fall Gem Show, which is usually last week of August, first week of September, but it's very tiny. It's like 2 or 3 shows because most of those vendors are going to Denver, which Denver is a big show. And that's usually in September. So we're buying for the entire year. We are talking gemstones for launches, live gemstone sales, boxes, like our subscription box, kits, all of it. We are doing it in 3 weeks at the end of January, beginning of February. So it is absolutely insane. Okay. I love this time of year. I absolutely love it, but it is exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. So just to give you all frame of reference here, an average day for us once the gem show starts. And let me tell you, the first week, this is the first week of the gem show for us. The second week, it tapers off a little bit. Because of course, at this point now, we've been gem showing for a week. We have a week's worth of orders to send out. We have a subscription box usually to ship within that second week. There's just a lot of factors. So we do kind of pick and choose the second week. We still go shopping a few days, but we stay in office a few days. By the third week, we're all exhausted. We're probably out of money. And maybe Colin and I will leave and go hit a few vendors where there was something like, oh, we should have looked at that. Or hey, let's go back to this person and buy some more of this. Because now we've, taken a step back, seen everything that we've bought, and we're like filling gaps, But an average day for us for the first week, we usually meet at the office around 8 to 8:30. And usually get in one car. Just do it. And then so that we can get to a show around 9. Okay. Because all the shows are on the other side of town from us. But at least we're local. We're driving, we're buying, we're throwing the shit in the back of my car. We're driving back to the east side. That's the extent. We're not having to, and this is what I do tell a lot of people, is if you can find businesses that are in Tucson to buy your gemstones from, like even online, they're going to be cheaper just because we are not having to pay to have pallets shipped back to wherever, because like, let's say we buy a gemstone for $5. That's the cost to us, $5. We put it in the back of my car. We drive it over here. We unpack it. We take pictures. We put it up. It costs us $5. But other people, they have to box it up, ship it possibly across the United States on a pallet. So that gemstone, if you take the whole pallet, divide it by all the gemstones on the pallet, that gemstone may now have cost them $5.50, So it's just, if you can find people that are in Tucson, like online, that are selling you gemstones, you might get a cheaper deal. You should get a cheaper deal. I'll say that. You should get a cheaper deal. Anyway, so we'll meet around the office. We'll meet at the office around 8 to 8:30 so we can get to a show somewhere around 9. We'll stay at a show until 3:30 or 4-ish. Depending on the show, we may show hop. So like we may hit one if it's a little bit smaller, then go down the street and hit a second one, or go across the interstate, hit a second one, or hit a third one. It all depends on which show we've scheduled to attend that day. And if there's fucking parking, because sometimes like we've had to call audibles. We've had a certain show on our list for the day and we show up and there's people like they've closed the gate and they're like, there's absolutely no parking in there. And I'm like, what the hell are we supposed to do now? So at that point, we try to transition at lunch. And we also do, I 100% will tell you this, we plan our gem show a around the, okay, I'm so sorry. It's telling me I'm not connected to the internet. Hopefully I'll still have video. But we'll plan gem shows around the food courts, because some gem shows have amazing food courts and some don't. I'm not even joking. So we will be like, okay, we're going to stay at this gem show for the first half of the day, and then we're going to head to this gem show because their food court's better. We'll go eat there and then shop the second place for the rest of the day. Yeah. Anyway, then we drive back to the office and we start cataloging gemstones till about 5 or 6. Many shows start on the same day. So we have to pick and choose where we're going to be because cloning has not happened yet. Yeah, cloning has not happened. I really wish cloning had happened because we used to have things spread out pretty well where one show would start on Wednesday, one on Thursday, one on Friday, one on Saturday. And these would be the main shows that we have to hit. That is no longer the case. They all seem to pile onto Thursday now. So we'll have to be at one place on Monday or Wednesday. And then 3 shows start on Thursday. And that's just a pain in my ass. So yeah. On an average day at the gym show, we get about 12,000 steps. Yeah. And we do eat food truck foods. I love it. Y'all know I have told you all about my food truck obsession. I love a food truck. We do drink coffee all day. Yeah. And it's just a constant go, 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 especially for that first week. By the 3rd week, like I said, we're out of money. We're out of energy. We're spending more time in the office. We're cataloging everything. But yeah, that's what it's like for us during the Tucson Gem Show. Okay. I have a list of 10 fun things to share with you all about the Tucson Gem Show or that come along with the Tucson Gem Show. They're just 10 fun little cute things. The first one, to let you all know, most gems are priced in kilograms, not pounds. So you'll pay $100 a kilogram, $200 a kilogram. Because, they're coming from countries where the metric system rules and we have to adapt. If the gem is priced in grams, it's going to be expensive. Okay, that's going to be your finer ones. That's going to be your jewelry grade, your cabochons, your faceted jewelry, amber, moldavite, Libyan desert glass. All of these are priced in grams. So the first year that I went to buy some amber, I did not realize that the minute that something switches from being priced by kilogram to gram, you're going to spend an ass load on it. That was a hard lesson to learn that first year. I spent a shit ton in amber. Yeah, so that's just a fun fact. If it's priced in kilograms, you're going to get 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. So you can do the math real quick in your head. But most of the vendors will have things. I mean, if you're buying wholesale or if you're buying in bulk, they'll have scales out for you too. We do carry a tiny, we call it our crack scale just because our drug scale. We do carry a little tiny scale with us that only does grams. This is for the jewelry because we have spent a lot in jewelry before, not realizing, because I get kilograms. Having done this for as long as we have, I can look at something and be like, okay, that's about 1 kilo. That's about 2 kilos. Grams, I still don't. So we have to bring our little scale with us. We'll pop it out, start putting pendants on it and be like, okay, this is going to be about $50 and, keep going. Because once they price in grams, you're spending an arm and a leg. Number 2, many sellers will not talk directly to women because of the culture, the country that they're from, their personal religious beliefs. So a lot of times they will, especially if this is our first dealing with that vendor, they'll talk to Colin first and basically in a roundabout way ask permission to talk to me. And it's funny because when this first started, let me finish that thought. Then once we continue to have a relationship with this vendor year after year, they recognize me and they greet me, you know? But at first, it's a little surreal until I realized what was happening because it was their culture. But they will never approach me if they don't know me. They will approach Colin first. They'll call him boss. It's so funny. And then, he'll be like, "Oh, boss, hey, how are you doing today? Like, what are you looking for?" And Colin will be like, "You don't talk to me. Like, you can talk to her." And they're like, oh, I need to talk to her. And he's like, "Yeah, talk to her." And then that's the permission that they're given. And then they come and talk to me. And from that point forward, they do recognize me. Probably the bright red hair. But yeah, they, a lot of them won't talk to women at first, or they'll be very shy. They won't make eye contact. And this is something like, if you're going to go to the Tucson Gem Show, you should know this because it's not a lack of respect. It is because of their cultural beliefs. Okay. Number 3, I can and will sniff out the most expensive gemstone in a tent or on a table. It is a superpower of mine. And that's where I said earlier, we do not go to the main Tucson Gem and Mineral Show because this is a superpower of mine. Okay. You can have an entire table of gemstones laid out and they all look exactly the same. And somehow I will spot the one that I'll be like, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." And I'll go directly to it and I'll pick it up and it will be 4 times the amount of any other gemstone on that table. I don't know why I have this superpower. It sucks sometimes because I fall in love with these gorgeous gemstones. And then they're like, I'm like, "Oh my God, that is so beautiful. How much is it?" They're like 10,000. And I'm like, 10,000 what? Like yen? Or 10,000 pesos? What are we talking here? And they're like, "No, $10,000. And I'm like, "American?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Can I just touch it?" So it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because not all gemstones are that expensive, but I can sniff out the high quality ones. So a lot of people will have an entire table. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them know what they have, so they'll have an entire table and then set off to the side. They'll be like, "Oh, well, when we got this shipment in or when we went to the mine, like we did this, but here are the special ones." And I'm like, "Damn you, you know what you have." But a lot of people, some of them don't. They'll just throw it all out on the table. And for example, if you are one of our customers, you know that year before last, we had Vivianite. That was the first year that we had seen it, which Vivianite looks like kryptonite. I mean, it's this bright green, sharp looking. So like if kryptonite was a real thing, I feel like it would be Vivianite. Last year we went to the gem show and there was a vendor that just table full of God knows everything. Okay. There was some Vivianite. There was some green tourmaline in quartz. There was some kyanite in quartz. There was a little bit of everything just displayed out. And as I started looking, I realized that some of the Vivianite was blue. And at that point, because I happened to go and find the one blue piece and I picked it up and I said, "Well, that's blue. That's more rare than the green." And so then we all got out our flashlights on our phone and started picking through all of the specimens on the table for the blue. And I ended up taking away all of the blue Vivianite that this guy had. So that's where it's a blessing because we paid for green Vivianite. And the specific specimens we picked up were blue Vivianite, which is just a little bit more rare. The guy probably could have tried to charge us a little bit more. But he was just like, "Oh, Vivianite is whatever it was, a kilo." And I single-handedly, like I had everyone on board and we single-handedly went through the entire table and picked out all of the blue Vivianite. So it's a blessing and a curse. It does make me absolutely fall in love with gemstones. And then they tell me the price and then I have to walk away because I'm not spending $10,000 on a sphere. Even though it was the most beautiful red rutilated quartz sphere that I've ever seen in my entire life. There's even vendors that Colin's like, "Don't let Morgan go there." And I'm like, "But I just look at the pretties. Can I just look?" But there are several vendors too that will have locked glass cases in their room or in their booth or in their tent. And I go look. But that's it. I look and I can't touch because they're so expensive and they're so pretty, but I can't do it. So, that's number 3 is I can and will sniff out the most expensive gemstone in the tent or the table. I'll sniff it out immediately. I don't have a thing with shoes or purses like a lot of women do, or clothing, but gemstones, I got a thing for gemstones. Number 4, most bathrooms are porta potties or bathroom trailers. Just a heads up there. Very few of the gem shows are in buildings. There's just a couple so that are in actual buildings with like real bathrooms. So be prepared to porta potty it or bathroom trailers, which sometimes have an attendant. So that's very nice, but yeah, be prepared if you're going to come visit. Number 5, sometimes you have to fight for your seat at the food court. Yes. Most people get hungry at the exact same time as you. That's another fun fact. But you will wait in line at certain vendors. If there is no one waiting in line for food at a vendor, there's a reason. I'm going to go ahead and share that with you too. There's a reason. Yeah. So either the food's not good or it's fucking expensive as hell. There's a chicken and waffle place at one of the wholesale sites that 2 years ago we went and ate. It was amazing. Oh, delicious. Did not cost an arm and a leg. So last year when we went back to them, and for 4 of us to eat, first of all, they had severely downgraded their food. But for 4 of us, it was like $120. Yeah, it's shit. And now I'm like, well, now I know why there wasn't a fucking line here. Anyway, you see, I take food very personally, you guys. You will have to fight for your seat at some of the food courts, though. It's just the way that it is. Or you're going to have to sit directly next to an absolute stranger because they just kind of cafeteria style it with like, long tables where you just have to grab a chair and pray that you can get stuff together. Yeah. Number 6, I have had gemstones stolen out of my hand at the gem show before by a random person. So 6 and 7 kind of go hand in hand. And I'm going to tell you all a story. I'm going to tell you all a story about this too. So I'm going to go over. So 7 is if 1 to 2 people are looking at something, you're probably okay. So like if Megan and I are at the show and we're looking at something, we're probably good. But the minute Renee comes over and then there's 3 people, I don't know if it's like a high pitched whistle, like a dog frequency type thing. I don't know what it is, or if it's like a bat signal that goes up that we can't see, but everybody else in the tent can see. The minute you have 3 people looking at something, everyone else in the tent perks up and immediately wants to come over and see what you're looking at to see if they also want it. So this story goes in. So what had happened was this was one of my first years at the gem show. And so I was not aware of any of this yet. I was still a virgin, still a newbie, gem show virgin. And I was looking at a citrine thing on a stand, and it was me and an old friend of mine. And I think Colin came over, or somebody else, one of our other people came over. And the minute that 3rd person came over and started looking, I literally was holding this citrine on a metal stand in my hand. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And all I did was like kind of put my hand down. I was still holding it. It was still in my possession. And I put my hand down to kind of rest my hands on the table real quick. And all of a sudden, this woman comes out of nowhere on my right, takes the citrine out of my hand and just hauls ass. And I literally stood there like, what the fuck just happened? Did someone really just steal a gemstone out of my hand? The answer is yes, they did. Okay, so that will happen. And it happens if you have more people looking at one item, it tends to happen. It's like panic sets in. They want to know what you're looking at. They want to know if they want the same thing that you're looking at. Do you have something good? Do you have the first chance of it? Like the first pick of it? And it gets a little insane. which also flows right into number 8. If you come up to me and ask me where I got something, I'm not going to tell you. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm not going to tell you unless I'm done shopping that. Okay. Last year, I was looking at this gemstone. I can also sniff out unique gemstones I've never seen before. I can immediately sniff them out and make my way to them. So I was looking at this. It was called Atlantisite, but it was basically serpentine with some pyrite, like lightning bolts in it. We ended up selling them. They were big towers, and I managed to see them. I'd never seen them before, and I went over to the table. And so I didn't know what this gemstone was. So I take one, and I go over to the man whose table it was, and I'm like, what is this gemstone? And immediately this old man pops out of nowhere, like a customer. He pops out of nowhere, and he's like, where did you get that? And I'm like, excuse me, sir? And so the vendor tells me, oh, it's Atlantisite, but it's like, it has the pyrite, like lightning bolts in it. And I'm like, okay. So that's when this old man goes, where did you get that? And I'm like, So I cradle this huge tower like a baby, and I haul ass back over to the table, ignoring this man who follows me back over to this table. And because there was literally only about 6 of these towers. And so I keep that one on me, and I start grabbing the other ones. He's grabbing them along with me. And this, I'm not kidding you, this happened. So I have learned my lesson. I will not tell you where I'm getting stuff, or I will generically point in a direction away from me and go over there, and then run in the opposite direction unless I'm done shopping. If I have cleaned out and picked out what I want of that area and someone's like, oh my God, where did you get those? I'll be like, oh, 3rd table over to the right next to the black tourmaline. I'll tell you, okay? But if I have not finished shopping it, I will not fucking tell you. I've learned my lesson, okay? Number 9, there are huge specimens at the Kino and Pueblo shows. There's huge specimens everywhere, but especially at the Kino and Pueblo shows. Those are the names of them. Women take provocative pictures here, and I don't understand it. So at Kino, there's very large amethyst geodes. And the women that's the young girls, and their ass is out, and there's like duck face going on. So those who are listening to the podcast on like Spotify or wherever, you're not getting the full show here because I'm making some faces for the YouTube people. Anyway, we've called those the amethysts. That's what we call them in-house. Because I don't know why. Do gemstones turn people on? I don't know what's happening with some of these pictures that these women take, because they'll hold a gemstone right in front of their boobs and push their boobs together. And then like, that's the picture that goes out on Instagram. And I'm like, I get it, sex sells, but I don't know. The gemstones don't turn me on that way. So, anyway, if you're going to be here, you might see some shit. You might see some shit when people are taking pictures, because I don't know what happens. I don't know why some of these people see this big amethyst and think, let me put my boobs on it. Let me put my ass on it. I don't know. Maybe I just have more respect for the gemstones. I mean, they can't give me consent to put my boobs on them. So maybe I don't know. Anyway, that's number 9. And number 10, I have seen people lick gemstones at the gem show. It's pre-pandemic, but I've seen people lick gemstones at the gym show for social media. I don't get it. That's nasty. Do you know how many people have touched that same gemstone? That's nasty. You need hand sanitizer at the gym show. And that was before the pandemic. Now that we've already had a pandemic and we still got that shit floating around, we hand sanitize after digging through anything. Your hands just get nasty. If you're there to like shop, your hands just get nasty. You need hand sanitizer. But now to think, did somebody lick this? You have to ask yourself that question. That's why another reason, don't put your boobs on it, because somebody might have licked it. And then anyway. All right, y'all. That's all I have for y'all today, except for a few more little tips. If you are going to attend the Tucson Gem Show at any time, bring cash, number 1. Don't be giving your credit card to some of these shady vendors, okay? Don't do it. Bring cash, okay? Plus, you're going to need cash for parking. Some of these places charge $10. Yeah, $10 to just park there. And some of the shows, JG&M, not worth it. Not worth the $10 for parking. So if you are coming here, or if you don't even know who I am. You happened upon the podcast because you were Googling Tucson Gem Show and you are looking for tips. JG&M, which is on Simpson Street, I think not worth the $10 in parking. Don't do it. I promise you. 22nd Street, worth the $10 in parking. Okay? But you need to spend all day there. They also have the best food court. They do. So there you go. And that one's open to the public. So if you are public, if you're not wholesale only, 22nd Street, it's a good show. It's a great show. There's a lot of shit to see, a lot of shit to do. Great food court. The $10 in parking is worth it there, but not JG&M. It's not worth it. And if anybody here knows who the organizers are of JG&M, I've already left 1-star reviews that are not worth $10 in parking. Anyway, hydrate and wear comfortable shoes. You definitely want to do that because, like I said, 12,000 steps a day. That's what I get when we go to the show. Okay, so that's what I have for you all today. I do have my Patreon shout outs for this week. Thank you to my new paid Patreon members, Andrea, Lisa, and Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining. For those who are interested in the paid Patreon, it's patreon.com/InkGoddessCreations. And this week's bonus episode, I'm going to tell y'all some more fun stories about the Tucson Gem Show. I am. This was an entertaining episode. So that's what I'm going to do even more in the bonus content over there on Patreon, is tell you all more stories from the Tucson Gem Show. So I want to thank you all for being here, for being a listener, for giving me a platform to be myself and to share fun things when I do. I mean, I do a lot of teaching and all that, but I really like to just sit back sometimes and talk and entertain you all. So thank you all for listening, and I will see you all next week. Bye. If you're looking for a magical community where you can just be yourself, check out my Ink Spirit Coven. The Coven is an online learning circle for eclectic witches who want to learn new witchcraft practices and how to easily incorporate magic into their daily lives, all while being supported on their personal spiritual journey. And you'll have me as your magical mentor, sharing my knowledge, answering questions, and facilitating the online community. Head to inkspirit.com to learn more and join. And if unique witchcraft supplies made by witches for witches is just what you need, head to my store, inkgoddesscreations.com, to see what we have to enhance your magical practice. We also have the Ink Goddess Creations box, a monthly subscription of magic mail filled with exclusive items that fit a magical theme. Head to the site to see this month's theme and sneak peeks.